I'm going downhill.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at Tyler and he's still in the middle laughing at me. Like, dude, that sucked. And I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm dying right now.
Right. Welcome to Big Fish Stories, the podcast dedicated to telling the real outdoor stories of adventure, hunting, and fishing. For the outdoors men and women who get lost in the stories around the campfire, this is the place for you. My name is Tyler Hendricks, located in the great state of Idaho, and today I have one of my best friends, Mr. Jake Christiansen, on the podcast today to talk about all things hunting, probably not fishing because he's not that good at it, and the outdoors. Jake, how's it going?
It's going good. How about you?
Doing pretty good. Let's start off talking about how you got in originally to the outdoors. And also, I want a precursor. This is Jake Christiansen. We originally had Josh Christiansen on before, who told some really embarrassing stories about Jake. So Jake's on to get back at him a little bit. But first,
I got some stories about you too.
Now we're just going to edit those out. First, we're going to talk about how you got into the outdoors, why you live in this area, and we'll go from there.
Basically, all started off with my grandpa, my dad, then having an older brother. You know, if I wanted to not stay home with my mom, I had to go with them. Mm-hmm. And I was small. I was young. It's like, I'll do it.
What age did you start?
Well, Josh's numbers were a little off, but I'm pretty sure the first time I spent most of the day in my dad's backpack, freezing, miserable. I knew if I complained, I wasn't going to get to go again.
Right.
So I just hung out in his backpack all day. Mm-hmm. My dad did not complain once. Well, maybe once. But he was just like, do you think you could walk a little bit? No, I can't. Sagebrush is 3 feet tall and I'm 2 foot tall.
Right.
Can't see anything. I can see everything from up here. That's kind of how it started. And then, you know, being the younger brother, I was watching my dad and my brother shoot deer every year. And I'm just like chomping at the bit. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, next year's my year. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, there's a story about that one buck in Unit 44 where I shot it.
Yep.
Josh killed it. Mm-hmm.
Then he stole your buck.
Yeah. And I did shoot a hole in my backpack, but I was young. Mm-hmm. And basically I couldn't hit a deer. I was a horrible shot. My dad and my brother were both phenomenal shots.
First, let's recap that story a little bit. So Josh told a story about Jake when he shot at a deer. His rifle barrel went into the backpack and he was looking over it through his scope, not realizing his barrel was in the backpack. And he shot through it how many times? Once, twice, something like that.
I blew a big hole in it once.
What was your thought when you originally realized what had just happened?
Well, we'll back up a little bit more. I was not the only one shooting at that deer.
Okay.
Me, my dad, and my brother were all throwing lead at this thing. Like it was not just one person.
Right.
I think I took first initial shot. Mm-hmm. You know, and I recoiled back. Barrel went into it, had a metal, I think it was carbon fiber or metal frame, mm-hmm. you know, that went up to the shoulder straps. And that's what I hit. And that's why it blew up. Mm-hmm. But it blew everything up.
Right.
And, you know, somebody hit the deer in the foot. Don't know who it was. They said, oh, it was because you shot your backpack. That's why you hit it in the foot.
Right. But everyone was shooting.
Everybody was shooting. So
it's funny how there's always different perspectives in these stories.
I probably did hit it in the foot.
Right.
I don't know. I was 11 years old. That was my second deer that I would have killed.
Right.
But yeah, went to, you know, the deer went over the ridge. I went to throw on my pack and just dumped everything all over the ground. And they started laughing, and I was just like so defeated.
Right.
My dad looked at me just like, bro, what did you do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, sorry, Dad.
It's a good learning experience in general because I remember, it's a good learning experience in general, especially at a young age, about barrel placement when you're shooting because when you're shooting at targets, it's not really a problem usually. You're usually sitting on a bench or you're leaning up, you know, on the hood of your truck. You can usually see that the barrel is not in the dirt or in your backpack. But I remember I was with a buddy, and it's actually that big deer, the big deer that I have, the biggest deer that I've shot. I went to shoot it, and I remember my buddy, right when I was about to pull the trigger, taps my shoulder and he goes, "Look at your barrel." And literally my barrel was like in the dirt, and I didn't even see, and I was getting ready to pull the trigger on this thing. And I have had experiences where I've shot the dirt while I was trying to aim at a deer, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, but dirt's flying everywhere. And it took me 5 minutes afterwards to realize what the heck just happened.
I just shot the dirt.
Yeah. So slipping it into your backpack is a great, expensive learning experience.
I've tried to replay that, like at home when nobody's watching. I'm like, how did I do that? Even like a year ago, I'm like, okay, I'm going to set this up. I couldn't replay the situation.
Right.
I mean, everything was working against me.
Right.
Just for stories like this,
Yeah.
I shot my backpack in half. Simple as that.
Yeah. So you'd shot a deer before this one, right?
Yeah. So my first deer, I was 10. I had my grandpa's old 30-06 Springfield military issued gun, and found some deer. My dad and brother went like out and around. I went straight up. My dad said, if you see one you want to shoot, make sure, went through all the basics, shoot it behind the shoulder.
Right.
If it drops, make sure you know where it is. I walked up there, deer jumped up. I shot from the hip, dropped it, had no idea what happened. My dad and brother walk over and they're like, "Did you get one?" "Yep."
Yeah.
"Where's it at?" "I don't know." That was the whole thing. So
Yeah.
it took 3 of us about an hour and a half to find it. And they're just like, "Are you sure you hit one?" "Pretty sure."
Yeah.
I'm just sitting there, 10 years old, shaking like,
Right.
He's like, "Where'd you aim?" "I didn't." He just like looked at me and he's like, "Dude, like,
Yeah.
come on." I'm
Right.
like, I don't even remember pulling the trigger, Dad.
Right.
It went bang and it dropped.
Yep.
So we finally found it.
And for those of you who don't know, Jake and Josh's dad is very thorough about teaching people how to do the right thing.
Ethics. I grew up on ethics.
And that's why it would be surprising to him of like, how could you do this when I've taught you I mean, he probably went through hours and hours of education with you on where to shoot the deer, how to shoot it, how to breathe, all of that. And you're shooting it from the hip.
Yep. I've never seen my dad miss one.
Right.
Like 30-30 lever action, deer running down the mountain, shoots it in the back of the head. It's like, okay, and we all try that. We try to be that cool, but
right. Can't.
No, I can't even see it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But, anyways, that happened, and my brother gutted most of that one because I was 10. My dad's like, he was there this time. He stayed there. So they did show me how to.
Yeah.
But he did most of it, so I didn't really get the full effect until the year after that.
Right. Famous butthole story.
Yep. That one scarred me for sure. And I didn't think it was going to end up on a podcast. So here I am.
He joked I don't know if it made it in the podcast, but he told me later that his punishment for, and you can correct him if he's wrong, his punishment.
He has cleaned every butthole since then.
Yeah, his punishment is he has to clean every deer's butthole for the rest of his life.
I have not.
That you shoot.
I have not drug a deer out in about 9 years. I've packed every one of them out. But there's one thing I'll leave attached to the deer. And it's not that I don't want to do it. It's just like that man, my brother, scarred me at a young age.
Right.
And I don't care what it takes. It takes me an extra 30 minutes to cut around it and leave it attached to the body.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Right. And it seems like it's just a protocol now. He knows you shot one. I got to go over there and take the butthole out.
This last year was the first year. Like I called him, obviously it was already taken out because I was in a bad spot with that deer.
Right.
But I called him 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, "Hey," and he's just like, "No." I said, "Dude, we got to get it out. It's the first thing that rots."
Right.
And he was just like, "Can I do it tomorrow?" And I made him go all the way over there, and he called me and he's like, "It's not here." I know. You still have to go through the motion.
Yeah.
Yep. So
that's awesome.
I'll never let him live it down.
Right. For those of you who don't know the story, go to Josh Christiansen's podcast. I believe it's episode 5. to go through the whole story. Okay, so at this point, you've shot 2 deer. I have a story to tell around that age. For as you're getting older, you actually got amazing at shooting shotguns, clay pigeons, ducks.
I was a sponsored NSCA shooter.
Yeah, at a really young age. You were really good at that, way better than Josh and I. And
It's the only thing I had.
which is probably why you're shooting deer from the hip.
I was better at it.
Yeah.
I didn't have to physically aim through a scope.
Right.
Just hip shoot and make
I
it happen.
I remember around that age, we were coyote hunting, and we were actually spotlighting coyotes at night, and this was over at Charles property.
I think I'm remembering now.
Yeah. And we were all sitting there calling, and we don't turn on the spotlights until we start hearing them coming closer and closer. And then all of a sudden we shine a spotlight out in the field, and it's way over on Josh and my side of the tree. And Josh is tapping me like, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. I'm tapping him, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. And all of a sudden, boom, boom, boom. And the coyote just like runs away, and we're looking at you and you're like this. We're like, you're not even aiming. You're just shooting from the hip. And so that was the Jake of old. And then you went through a transition period where you actually got really good.
I was tired of being last place all the time.
Right.
That story that Josh also told, that I was in high school, I got in trouble, so I wasn't allowed to hunt. There was like 3 days left of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Me, Reed Schuler, and my brother, we all had a gun.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was just Reed and my brother.
Mm-hmm.
I was out of ammo.
Mm-hmm.
And
why were you out of ammo?
Nobody really knows. We're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad couldn't keep up with my ammo bill.
Right.
Have to buy a case of ammo just for 3 days of hunting.
Right. Only if you want an animal dead, it's going to take at least 40 rounds to get a bullet into that animal.
I had an average of probably 25. I could usually kill one or knock legs off in 25 rounds.
Right.
It's pretty embarrassing. But that particular one, my mom said, you can go, but me and your dad are going to come watch from the truck. And I said, okay, great.
Yep.
It was the worst experience. My mom has not watched hunting anything since then. Went up on the mountain, snuck up on these deer. There was like a little 3x3 at 75 yards. I can throw a rock and hit that.
Right.
Reed hands me his gun, said, hey, it's got a super light trigger. Okay, sure. I didn't know what a hair light trigger was. I was like, perfect. I pretty much had to make a fist with mine to shoot mine.
Right.
Anyways, put the crosshairs on the deer, went to just like put my finger on the trigger to get ready, and boom. And they both looked at me, and I'm just like, that was my bad. I did not mean. And he's like, you're shooting at the wrong deer. I'm like, well, I wasn't ready to shoot.
Right. Right.
Anyways, so there was probably 150 deer in this spot. They just started scattering. So what do? I just start shooting at them. Boom! I'm like, that one's got horns. That one's got horns. And most standard hunting rifles will hold 3 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber.
Right.
So I emptied that one, handed it to Reed, and I said, give me another one. And that's where that story comes from, because they were both loading guns and I was just shooting.
Right. So to paint the picture for people, you are shooting one rifle while someone else is reloading the other rifle, and they're continually swapping rifles while you're emptying all the ammo for it. Yep.
And Reed's a dude that probably only carries 1 or 2 bullets with him when he goes hunting.
Right.
And that day he had about 10, I think.
He knew.
I shot them all.
Yep.
But it was like the 19th shot. One deer stood up right below us. He's probably a very young 2x2 buck.
Yeah.
And man, I felt so good about it. I took my brother's 30 out, or my grandpa's 30 out 6, stood up, put my elbow on my hip. Like, I was super cool. Shot, and he dropped. But I took both of his back legs off. And
your mom was witnessing
She was watching the whole thing.
Yep.
And I was pumped. I'm like, I can kill him now.
To paint the picture for people too, you were way up on a mountain. Your mom is down on the bottom of the road looking up at the mountain, correct? Is she looking through binoculars or spotting scope?
My dad set up a spotting scope so she could watch.
Gotcha. So she's getting a firsthand.
Yeah, she was. I've never had an ass chewing quite like that my entire life. And my dad didn't say a word to me because it's just like, that's my son. Like I did that.
Right.
You know,
like he's taking responsibility.
Yeah. And I was pumped. I'm just like, I'm grounded and I just killed a deer.
Right.
Like, and Reed's just like, dude, what's going on? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, let's walk up and shoot it. Anyways, it kind of scurried over, and like the older I get, like that was the worst. Like, that hurts my heart.
Right.
Anyways, so
back then it's easy to be numb to it because there's so much adrenaline and excitement.
I was a kid. I just wanted to kill things.
Yeah, exactly. And as you get older, you find yourself feeling way more sympathetic.
It was horrible.
Which is great.
And I'm like super embarrassed to tell this story, but it's the truth. And so it kind of went over this little tiny knoll. We walked down there and Reed started peeing and I kicked up the deer and it took off running, knocked him over.
Yep.
I mean, just full on disaster mode.
Right.
Like yard sale when you're skiing. You crash and things just blow up.
Right.
That's what was happening.
Yeah.
And me being young, I'm like trying to raise the gun and shoot it when it's next to him. And he's just like, Jake. And it's like, sorry, like, I'm excited.
Right.
Anyways, it took me like 5 more rounds to kill it. It was at like 10 yards. I kept missing. And Reed's just like, I'm just going to kill it with a knife. Like, let's just get this done and over with.
Yeah.
And my brother's just obviously talking smack the whole time.
Right.
It's like, yep, figured. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And so, I ended up killing it, like point blank. I had to put the barrel in it to finally hit it.
Right.
And I know it was, and it only had 2 bullet holes in it. So it wasn't like I ruined a bunch of meat.
Yeah, that's true.
And I shot the knees out of it.
Yeah.
Which is even hard to talk about, but
that's
what I did. So
for people who, because this is, especially as you develop as a hunter, it's so common for these mistakes to be made at a younger age. I think a lot of people don't understand, even with a deer dying this tragically, it's still better than a lot of the alternative ways that deer die in the wild. You think about starvation that deer oftentimes go through. You think about being eaten alive by wolves. Pretty much the best option a deer has is a mountain lion. And there aren't a ton of those to take them out. But a bear eats them alive and wolves eat them alive. And then there's starvation. All of those sound way worse than being shot at a bunch, even though we obviously want to make the best possible, cleanest shot that we can.
When we can.
But it happens, especially at a young age when you're figuring things out. And still, I think, because this is how I justify it in my head for those who are, opposed to this. I still justify it in my head as this is still a cleaner death than a lot of these deer are going to experience if humans are not involved at all.
Right.
So,
and it's I'm past that point, but I had a rough.
Yeah.
Between you, my dad, and my brother.
Yeah. Our favorite thing to do is give you shit.
Right.
You were the younger brother.
And I deserved it. I was a horrible shot. Horrible.
For years, too.
Yeah. Like I had a horrible streak. The only thing I could beat you guys at was shotguns.
Right.
And nobody liked duck hunting.
No. Yeah.
So I was stuck. I couldn't go by myself. My parents were like, oh, no, you're basically too stupid. Like you're going to drown in waders by yourself in negative 20-degree weather.
Right.
I'm like, I got this.
Right. Yeah.
But they're right. I almost drowned.
Yep.
They were there. But
do you think that was with that deer? Was there a pivotal moment where all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need to definitely adjust?
No, I thought everything was great. I thought I was the best hunter in the world. It's like, I killed it with 2 shots.
For those who know you, they're going to be like, yep, that's an
Sounds
honest
about
answer.
Right. Yep. No, it was, I think the turning point for me was seeing how little my deer were and seeing how, like, what people could kill in the same area that I was in. I was just too lazy to go a little bit further. And my dad wasn't lazy. He would run to the top of a mountain just to kill a meat buck.
Right.
Because that's the way they grew up.
Right.
And
It's purely about, and I know this about your dad. It's purely about the meat.
Yep.
Sometimes he even has felt guilty for going after a bigger buck.
Yep. He won't. And and up until a couple of years ago, I finally got him convinced, and he shot a couple of decent ones.
Yeah.
And he was just like, oh, they actually taste better. Like, well, don't kill them in sagebrush for one. You know, they taste like sagebrush.
Right.
Anyways, yeah, I think the turning point for me was I got old enough and I was like, man, I really suck at this. Like, I'm good at hunting. I can spot really well. I can find them. I just can't shoot them.
Right.
I'm better off throwing a rock at them.
Yep.
You know, and it was finally, I'm just like, I can do this. Like, I just need a better gun. So I saved up money all summer, invested in a gun, had no idea what I was doing, bought 5 things that were all the wrong, you know, and then finally got the right setup.
Right.
And, that's kind of how it started. And I was shooting these guns, you know, I was such a little guy. You know, I was 65 pounds shooting a 300 Win Mag with no muzzle brake on it. I'd come home with black eyes and this buck, you know, and my dad's just like, yeah, I think you should probably look at a couple of different options, but he was no better. He was shooting a 338 Win Mag that was like synthetic.
Yep.
And he didn't shoot it at the range because it hurt so bad.
Right. My dad's always been the same with that as well. He doesn't want to shoot unless he absolutely has to. I mean, I guess I'm similar, but I want to put a lot of rounds through my gun before hunting season. Like, at least a month before, I'm going out every single weekend to put rounds through my gun to make sure that I can shoot at all the different ranges. But yeah, my dad, it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get him to just go shoot a round. And then when he shoots a round, sometimes it completely misses the box, or other times he shoots and it's dead on. He's like, perfect, I'm done.
Yep. And that's that generation. My dad has had the same box of ammo for literally 12 years.
Right.
And he's just like, I need to shoot one. If it's off, I'll shoot a second one. I'll hold off the target to hit the center, and it's good. I'll know where to hold for the next shot. And I'm just like, you know, maybe this is where I went wrong, because I listened to that. We called it Kentucky windage. Like, oh yeah, I can hit that one. Yep. Not even close. I don't even hit the mountain. You know, and it's like, this isn't working for me.
Yes.
Like, to beat my dad, to beat my brother, and it's not the size of the animal. It's killing one under 5 shots.
Right.
That was like what I was trying to beat, because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I think it was 2017. I killed that really big one.
Yeah. I can I tell a story about a phone call I had, or you want to start? Because you called me on the mountain. I'll just go for it. Yeah, I won't tell the actual hunting story. I'll let you tell it. So Jake did get a really big buck. But right before he got that buck, I get a phone call from you, and you're cursing. You're so mad. You're like, screw this. I hate this. Oh, I've missed too many deer today. I can't believe this. You're like bitching about the entire day. I'm quitting hunting. Like, so mad.
Sounds about right.
And then the next photo I get is this monster buck. So tell me what happened in between.
I found, all on my own, no help, I found a really big buck. This was the 300 Win Mag. It was pretty set up. I knew where it was hitting. I was consistently hitting.
And you'd missed bucks before you saw that buck, right?
No.
On the same day, or no? Okay. You tell.
That's so I get up early in the morning. It's like, at that time, it took me like 3.5 hours of straight vertical climbing to get within a shot, because that buck kind of was moving in 2 different basins. Got up there, got set up, could not find him. All the deer that he was with were there. There was like 30-something bucks with him. Yep. And I was like on my pack, all set up, laying down. Everything was perfect. And all of a sudden, he stands up. It's like 330 yards. Yeah. I'm like, this couldn't be any better. Other than me having buck fever and freaking out, I'm just like, it's already killed in my mind. Right. And this is what the picture's going to look like. And I'm going to shove it in my brother's face, Tyler's face, and my dad's face. And I'm going to kill it with 1 shot.
For all the pain and misery we've caused for making fun of you all those years.
I brought 10 bullets with me. 9 of those, I missed that buck. every shot. The furthest shot was about 460 yards.
Yeah.
I couldn't touch him. It's like there was a force field around him. And I was like hitting low right underneath him.
Yep.
And so I just kept raising my reticle. No matter where I aimed, I could have aimed across the canyon and I'd have hit below him. Like that's
how shooting up at the sky.
Yeah.
You would hit below his.
It was just not meant to be. And so I called you and I was like, dude. And I don't know why I called you. I should have kept my mouth shut.
You were venting.
Nobody would have ever known.
Right. You were venting because you were like thinking you're heading down now.
Yeah, I should have been.
And you're telling the story of this monster buck. And of course, I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's the one that got away. It's the big fish story.
Yeah, totally. And so I called my dad and he's like, dude, you're already up that high. Stay up there. And I'm like, Dad, I shot 9 times.
I have 1 bullet.
There's nothing, like if I can't hit a deer with 9,
right?
What do you think I'm going to do with 1?
Right.
And he was just like, well, just, trying to be encouraging, like, go look for blood. And I'm like, I missed. Yeah. Clearly. And so I did. I went and looked for blood and I followed his tracks for a while and they went, of course, down to the timber and I dropped about 200 feet in elevation and I side hilled all the way around to the other side. And I mean, I was like mad. I was talking on the phone, loud, stepping, crunching, rolling rocks down the mountain.
Yep.
Because I didn't care. I built this buck up so much and I just missed.
Yep.
Nobody's going to believe me.
Right.
So I came around the corner. I was talking to my dad and it just like looked like this beautiful picture perfect. Like there's a buck in here.
Yeah.
And I sat down right below a tree and I was glassing underneath a tree branch and I found a doe and I'm like, okay, well, there's deer and they didn't run from my monstrosity a mile that way.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm okay. I'm like, Dad, I got to call you back. There's some deer in front of me. And I kind of slid my gun under the tree, got into position, and I ranged it. And it was like 250 yards. I'm like, I'm not super confident in myself right now, but if it's a buck, I'm going to shoot it. Yep. Not thinking like, okay, it's private property down there. I can't go that way. I have to come back up and out. Yep. I was just like, I don't care. I got to come home with something. Right. And right then I saw something moving through the trees and it was not the same buck. It was a different buck. The buck I originally missed was a typical 5x5. Probably better half of 195 inches. He was a really good deer. Yeah. Anyways, this buck was pushing does at noon in the middle of the day. I'm just like, okay, this is a godsend. Like I can't miss. Right. I'm going to kill this one. Yeah. And there was one little tiny opening in the trees at 640 yards. Jeez. And I was trying not to focus on that, but I knew where my gun was hitting, but it wasn't hitting at 300 yards. So I was like, I got 1 bullet. I'm either going to kill him or I'm going to miss by a mile. Yep. Easy. Because my left and right was good. It was just my elevation was not. Right. Anyways, he kept walking in between this opening and just like, I was like, no, probably not going to happen. I was steady. I wasn't nervous. I was just mad that I missed the first one. Right. And I didn't even know how big he was. I knew he was good. All I had was a side profile and he was really tall and he had deep forks. I'm like, it's good enough. I got to redeem myself here. Right. And he finally, like I put my head down, took a deep breath because I was all nervous. And it's like, I've got 1 bullet. Yeah. This is not like me. I should have 30. Like that's
why
more.
I only packed 10.
That's more my speed. Well, I was feeling all cocky, you know, I was like, I'm just going to take 10 bullets. And, anyways, I put my head down, took a deep breath, picked my head up and he's standing broadside. I'm just like, oh, I didn't have time to get nervous. I just put my crosshair. I had mil dots at the time. So I put like my 5th mil dot on his back and I shot and he dropped and I might've peed my pants. I'm not sure. It's just, I was like, so
did you
excited.
know how big he was?
No.
Okay.
Like I knew he was big, but I didn't know how big. Right. He could have been 6 inches wide, but I knew he was 28 inches tall. Like, right. I was like, I don't care. Yeah. I got to come home with something. And I called my dad and I'm like, well, I killed one. And he's like, with 1 bullet? No, you didn't. And I'm just like,
it was unheard of.
Here we go. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. And he's like, well, send me pictures.
I like how he encouraged you to stay up there and then doesn't believe that you killed him.
Right. And he's like, what? I was like, no, I'm serious. Yeah. And he's like, well, send me a picture. And I'm like, I can't move right now. Like, I'm in disbelief like you are.
Right.
I don't know how this just happened.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I walked over there and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is huge.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know deer could get this big.
Oh yeah. I remember that buck. It blew all of our bucks out of the water. At that time, we were all competing with like, you guys had both gotten decent deer in unit 44. But we were all competing with the smaller 3x3s, 2x2s, maybe the 44 bucks you guys had were a little bit bigger, but they didn't have wide frames. They weren't very tall.
They were small frames, 4x5s.
Yeah.
Is what they
So
both
all
were.
of a sudden, I think that was a realization of holy shit, there are deer like this on public land. Our parents did not teach us that there were deer like that anywhere.
No.
I assumed that any big buck came from a controlled unit or on private property.
Mm-hmm.
No clue that there were deer like that on
not
public land.
Not in a general unit.
Right.
And that's where I was, because I could literally see houses, on one side of me.
Right.
And it was stupid, but all the stars aligned. That was like my moment. And I was like, I'm going to show Josh, I'm going to show Tyler, like, this is my moment.
Yeah.
And I killed it with one bullet, technically. So it's a win-win for me.
Yeah. There's still 9 shells in the mountain somewhere. But...
Yeah. Nobody knew that
until
now.
Yeah.
Actually, no, there was a lot of people watching that buck. And there was a lot of people on the highway that morning.
Right.
I got 2 phone calls.
Well, it was definitely late in the day. It was like I felt like it was for sure after 10.
When I shot at the first one?
No, when you actually hit your buck was later in the day, right?
12:15.
Yeah, 12:15. What a weird time to shoot a buck.
That's what I'm saying. Like all the stars aligned, and it was just like, that's my moment.
Right.
I haven't had another one like that, but I took that one and ran with it. So
yeah. Were you shooting in the forest? Was it in a forest that you?
He was in the trees. Yeah, there was one gap in the trees. Like I could see their white butts moving through the trees, and I just like scan, and I'm like, okay, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And I obviously can't shoot a moving animal. I can't shoot one standing still.
Right.
So I was like, well, this isn't in my odds at all.
Yeah.
Or in my favor. And anyways, like he just kept going back and forth. The does kept circling. He just like kept stepping in, and I'm just like, stop.
Right.
Like, not that I have a chance, but stop, please.
Right.
And he did, and I hammered him, and it was like, that was like my first initial niche, and he ended up scoring 189 inches. Or no, he went down to 186. So he's 186 inches.
Yeah. He went down because he's a non-typical, right?
Well, he shrunk. They all shrink a little bit. They don't shrink that much, but he shrunk a little bit. I didn't probably take care of it like I should have. I was just stoked. I was like, look at this thing. Anyways, I called my dad because I realized the mess that I was in. And I couldn't carry a deer like that out by myself because I had to go uphill.
Yeah.
Anyways, I dropped him a pin. He came up and he was just like, dude. And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
Like, help me. I still can't walk.
Right.
Anyways, we got it out of there. And that was kind of I sold everything I had, got new equipment, new guns. I'm just like, I can't afford to miss, because I find a deer, I build it up, and then it doesn't exist because I miss it.
Right.
Like I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't want to wound an animal.
Right.
Like I was 16 or so. No, I was probably 20 when that happened.
Well, and I think that did change also your entire style of hunting, because I remember going with you before, and it was a lot of like, go, go, go. It wasn't a lot of looking. And then I remember after that, it'd be like 10 a.m. 10 a.m. is usually when I'm like packing up and getting ready to hike to my evening spot. And you would be going, nope, we're going to scan the trees. Like we're going to scan under every single tree and every single gap. We're going to move along the ridge to get to a different vantage point and look in this side of the forest. And I don't know if that's the deer that clicked in your head where you're like, I need to be looking really thoroughly through these trees before I move on. And there were times where you'd spot a buck out of nowhere. All of a sudden, we were bringing you hunting because you had the eyes,
right,
to see every single deer that we couldn't see.
Up until I made the rule, whoever spots it gets first shot.
Right. Well, it didn't matter because you were always taking first shot no matter what.
I'd miss, and you guys were like, great,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
fine. You can have first shot. You can have first, second, and third. We'll clean it
We'll
up
still
afterwards.
get a shot. Yeah.
Yep.
That's
So
pretty funny.
yeah, no, that was a big thing. Like being young, being in good shape, man, you walk past everything. And
Yeah.
with how hunting is now, everybody goes up high and pushes everything down low.
Mm-hmm.
You could be 100 yards off the highway. There could be a 30-inch buck bedded down in the river bottom right next to you. Those aren't the ones I get lucky enough to ever find.
Right.
But I know they're there.
Right.
But yeah, everything changed. I was just like, okay, like I got lucky on this one. Now I have to get good because I'm not going to get lucky twice.
Right.
And then I'm not. I learn something every year. I learn a pretty hard lesson every year.
Right. Well, and I mean, every year you have to learn and you have to grow and you have to adapt and things change. But yeah, I would say there's a massive improvement from then to now. And I do think that must have been a defining moment for you, because now you could shoot a deer at 1,000 yards. No problems. Well, maybe some problems.
I couldn't get any lower than I was. Yeah. So there was only one direction to go.
Right.
But yeah, I've killed some really nice bucks since then. Mm-hmm. They've all been a little bit further than I've wanted to shoot.
Yep.
But I got something instilled into my head because of some of my upbringing that I can't watch it walk away.
Right.
Because it won't exist.
Right.
People didn't believe me. And I'm just like, well, I'm just going to shoot it.
Yeah.
And bring it home.
So I can prove that I did see it and it's here in the mountains.
And I hunt solo. So if I miss it, nobody knows. No, I learned how to shoot.
Except we all know that you're throwing lead into the mountains. So
yeah. Well, I haven't missed a deer in about 7 years.
That's good.
Everything I've wanted to kill, I've been fortunate enough to kill.
Yep.
And part of that is because I grew up and learned how to shoot. Because I got to the point I didn't want to see an animal suffer. Right. And you'd work your butt off getting to the top of a mountain. Here come some guys road hunting that shoot 15 shots over the top of you at 1,500 yards at deer that are just like, who's that idiot down there? Like, what are they shooting at? And all the time, bullets are whizzing over my head. Right. And I'm just like, that's not ethical. Right. Like, what if they wound one, and I'm within 300 yards of that deer? I feel obligated to kill it. Right. Now that's my tag. Yeah. And I'll always fill my tag. If it's the last day of the season, I don't care how big it is. We eat the meat. Yeah. But yeah, I totally have different guns, different equipment. Vortex Optics has some sweet stuff, and they've hooked me up huge. Awesome. And I mean,
so what is it? What is it about big bucks that gets you going?
They're the most elusive, hardest animal other than wolves. Can I talk about wolves on here?
Yeah. Chris Sy on the last episode talked about shooting a wolf and eating it.
Oof. See, that's pretty savage. I don't think I could eat one. I would try it.
Yeah, that's what I told him. He said it tasted great.
I've eaten mountain lion. I've eaten some gross stuff, but wolf is, I don't know. Anyways, the niche for me is most of this hunting got easy. I can go out anywhere and shoot a deer, just like you, just like Josh. We can go shoot a deer. Right. But to shoot a mature mule deer that's over 5 years old.
Oh yeah, it's a different world.
They're smart. We can all go out. We can kill elk with our bows. It's hard, but we can do it. It's not rocket science. It's more of a luck game, or putting yourself in the right position. With deer, you have to check under one tree from 4 different angles. Right. They may be there. They may not be there. So for me, I still want to beat you and Josh all the time.
Well, you're winning.
I'm kind of stuck on that.
You're definitely winning. You could slow down and let us catch up a little bit.
And like Nick Turco too. He's got something on me.
He might be tough to beat.
He can hike circles around me.
Right.
I'm slow, but I'll go all day. Right. And he's fast and can go for 3 days. Right. So for me, it's like that's my friend group that I grew up in, and I don't care to be the best, but I'm not gonna be
the worst,
the dude that I was. Right. So,
well, and it's funny because I even remember when you were a kid, you were so headstrong about like, I want to do this. I want to do it myself. I remember a popular story that your dad would always tell And he told it to us while we were.
Is that the swamp story?
Yes.
Yeah.
While
I'm
we're
surprised that one didn't come out yet.
Yeah, it's coming out right now.
Perfect.
While we were elk hunting, he told me the story because you were like, Dad, I want to lead. I want to lead. And before it was always Josh or your dad leading. And he goes, you remember the swamp, Jake? And you'd stop and like put your head down. And it's because you were doing that on a hike, archery hunting, correct?
Yep.
And he said, and you guys were hiking and you kept going like, I want to go over there. I want to go over there. And he's like, no, I'm leading, or Josh was leading. And you were just at that young enough threshold that I don't think they trusted you to lead yet.
No. Why would they?
Right. And then finally, it was towards the end of the day and your dad's like, fine, go ahead, like lead, whatever. We're just heading back to the car.
I think he secretly knew like what was in front of him.
Right.
But part of it too is like, I was small.
Yeah.
I hit my growth spurt when I was like last year. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I was always really small.
Right.
And I was always like, I could hike better when I wasn't trying to keep up with somebody.
Right. That makes sense.
And everybody was.
You're taking like 3 steps to everyone's step.
That's especially with you.
Right.
It's like taking 4 or 5.
Right.
And you're just like,
just slowly waddling
size
up
17 shoe. And I'm just like, just trying to jump into the next footprint.
Right.
But yeah, that was like the main thing. I was just like, I'm a strong hiker, but following people, like I get bored. I'm just like looking at the ground the whole time.
Right.
And when I'm in front, I'm like attentive, I'm aware.
Right.
But not that aware.
Apparently not.
Because
well, actually, you're pretty aware for far away things, I guess.
After this story happened, I'm aware of everything.
So Jake, finally your dad lets you lead and you step in front and you run ahead and you run right into a swamp. How far did you sink up in that swamp?
Past my waist. And it was like, it looked like you could tell it was like a marshy area. There was a spring,
Yep.
And it was like 50 yards down the hill. There was a clear elk wallow. Like
Right.
it was wet.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad's just like, go ahead. Here's a life lesson coming your way.
Right.
And I just like went ahead and I'm just like, yeah, that's fine. I got this. And
Yeah.
it just freaking disappeared.
Right.
And they're both standing there.
Mhm.
Like they didn't even move. I just walked in front and sunk. And they're both just like, oh, how'd that work out for you?
Right.
And I'm just like so mad,
Yep.
so embarrassed.
Uh-huh.
I'm just like, man, that was my opportunity.
Right.
And I just blew it.
Always trying to like show
I'm
people.
never going to get to lead again.
Right.
Like ever.
Yep.
Anyways, they let me struggle.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want your help. I'm
Right.
fine. I'll get out of this.
Right.
And I struggled for a while
Mhm.
and I can't even remember what they did, but all day, man, it was like the nastiest, stinkiest mud you could ever imagine.
So now they're for sure making you walk behind.
From my waist down about, I don't know, about an hour later, it started drying out.
Yeah.
And it was just, and Dad's like, well, we're supposed to be quiet when we're archery hunting. And if we do make noise, it's not supposed to sound like that,
Right.
So it was, and that was kind of our first year archery hunting.
Yeah.
My dad didn't grow up doing it. So we all started like the same year. We didn't know anything.
Mhm.
Obviously didn't know there was a swamp in the middle of a mountain
Right.
in the desert,
Right.
but there is.
Now you know they're out there.
Yeah, so that was another highlight moment for me.
Well, and it's funny because I look at the juxtaposition of it now, where before it was all about trying to prove yourself, and now it does feel like you're actually genuinely trying to hunt, or you're trying to genuinely help people get into hunting. Because it seems like now when people are struggling, you're more than willing to be like, hey, let me show you how to do this.
Yeah.
Let me show you the ropes. Let me show you not necessarily where your best spot is, but I'll show you
I'll take you to your spot. Pick a spot on a map. We'll go there.
Right. I'll show you Tyler's spot is what you tell people.
I got a buddy. He's got some deer here. Let's go here.
He doesn't mind if you're in there. So that, I think that's great. That instead of a lot of people really seclude themselves in their hunting and they don't want to talk about it. Like Nick Turco, it was really hard for him to be on this podcast because he didn't want to promote, and nothing against him. This is just an ideology that I don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
I want people in the outdoors. I want people hunting, and I want people caring about the wildlife that we're participating in shooting.
For sure.
And I know that to a lot of people who don't hunt, they're like, what does that even mean? How can you care about something that you want to shoot? But I feel like I love animals so much more than most people do. And it's because I'm around them all the time.
Yeah.
But guys like Nick, they want their spots and they want to be secluded. And that's their personality. They want to be by themselves out in the middle of nowhere. And if they see someone in their area, it pushes them to go farther and farther and farther. And that's why that dude is out in the middle of freaking nowhere all the time, is he's trying to get away from everybody and everything.
Yep.
And he's probably not going to be, except for close friends and family, he's probably not going to be that guy who teaches people or takes them into his areas or anything like that, which nothing against that mentality, but I appreciate that you're open to wanting to teach people and train people. And so you teach people how to even shoot rifles, shoot long range. Tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
Well, first of all, everybody knows I kill all my deer in Colorado.
Yeah.
Not Idaho.
Right. Oh, so you are more like Nick Turco then. Actually, Colorado's way easier to hunt, so everyone should go there.
Everybody should go there.
Yeah. If you want a really bad time, I had, and I had my wife's cousins came in from town, and I kept telling them over and over, we're hunting in public land, public open units. And this is going to suck if you're not used to hiking.
Oh, you're talking about Blake
and Colin. Yep. And his two buddies. And I kept telling them over and over, this is going to be tough, like really hard. And I think they were like, yeah, we've hunted in Wyoming. We've hunted in Colorado. I don't know if they had hunted in Colorado at that point yet. But I think they thought it would be similar to when you purchase the rights to hunt someone's ranch land.
Right. It's totally different over there.
Totally different. And when they got here, it was like the first hike, they were like, what in the hell are you talking about? No, you can't hike up this. And sure enough, I was like, yeah, you have to hike up this and you may or may not see a deer. This isn't an easy,
there's nothing guaranteed on that mountain.
Right. And it's going to suck the whole way up if you're not used to it. And so they learned that lesson that first year, and then Blake came back with a vengeance a couple of years after that.
I got to give it to Blake.
Yeah.
They came up, I went in the Middle Fork with him. I got tags and I was just like, well, I'll go hunt with you guys.
Yeah.
And dude, I'm like, but you need to be prepared. Yeah. Because where we hunt is like, that's child's play to the Middle Fork.
Compared to the Middle Fork
is gnarly. Mm-hmm. Anyways, he ran on a treadmill every day on an incline. Yeah. And I said, let me know when you can do 10 miles without stopping. Mm-hmm. And he worked all summer. He lost like 35 pounds and he showed up like looking pretty.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm ready.
Yep.
And I was just like, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome.
And day one, man, he was hot on my heels.
Yep.
He's just like, Jake, I'm right behind you. I got you.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay.
Well, even like, there's a lot of people that motivate me, but not a lot that I know in real life. Mm-hmm. That guy, when he showed up, obviously had no clue what like the hiking that he would have to do, the shape that he'd have to be in. But that guy never quit. Like every morning, every evening, he was hiking up all of these different, and for us, we're used to them. We're used to the altitude. We're used to hiking up. We know where we're going. For him to have no experience in hiking these types of mountains and just doing it every morning, every evening until he got something with you that day was super inspiring to me. And then to come back a few years later and kill a pretty big buck. Yeah. And be in the shape that he was in for.
He killed like 186-inch mule deer.
Yeah. I mean, trophy.
And he shot it at 560 yards.
Yeah.
I got to give it to him.
Yeah.
Because when I met him, he's like, dude, I can shoot like 50 yards.
Right. Well, in Wisconsin, like 50 yards is all you need. Yeah.
And I said, well, that's not going to work here. Mm-hmm. You're never going to see a deer at 50 yards.
Right.
Like we're in the open.
If I see a deer at 50 yards, I actually don't know what to do.
The only one I've missed in 7 years was at 75 yards.
Right, exactly.
And I hip shot it, and I'm not good at that anymore.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was, I got to give it to him, man. He shot that deer. He laid down, and he's just like, Jake, check me. Am I good? And I'm like, man, you're like, he's not going to stand there all day.
Right.
So like, look at the deer, not me.
Yeah.
And he shot it, killed it. And he was just like the most non-emotional man. He doesn't care about the trophy. He just wants to meet.
Right.
I'm just like, dude, look at that deer.
Right.
And he's just like, I'm not excited. I'm just like, dude, this is part of the fun.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter what size of the animal.
Yeah.
That is your trophy.
Right.
And he's just like, well, I feel like, and I'm like, shut up.
Right.
Like that is a trophy.
Yeah. That's
that
big
is
buck.
an over-the-counter tag. You guys came from Wisconsin, and I would have happily taken that deer home any day.
Right.
Like if you missed, I was shooting it.
Right.
Like,
when I remember the first year, I mean, when he worked his ass off every day and wasn't in the shape that he needed to be in, but still like kept grinding. When he shot that buck with you that last day, literally,
I almost killed him.
Literally the morning before he went, he was leaving. He still was like, I'm going to go up one more time. Shot that buck. I've never seen anyone so happy. And he says that he shoots a lot of deer in Wisconsin, but none of them were as meaningful as that mule deer because of the work that he had to put into it.
I mean, I took him up that mountain, and I didn't really push him too hard because I knew he was tired, but I was in really good shape that year, working out with Benji, feeling good. And, I went up the mountain. He like got to the top, and he's just like, I'm not going to lie to you. How much further are we going? I'm like, well, that was just like the first knoll.
Yep.
That was like the knoll. Now we got to go up the mountain. And he's just like, okay. He was not happy.
Right.
But we got there and we ended up seeing the deer a little bit early because I don't think he would have made it to where I wanted to go. And I was just like, hey, there they are. And he's like, where? It's like, dude, I can't see that far. And I'm like, it's only like 400 yards.
Right.
Like to us, that's normal. And he's just like, we spot deer in the trees at 100 at like the furthest. Yeah. He's like, so it took him 20 minutes to find the deer.
Right.
And then, I'm just like, I turned my turrets and did all that. And I'm like, just hold that on. And he wouldn't shoot. 'Cause he's like, it's not going to happen. I'm like, dude, I know the gun. I know the setup. Just put where you want to hit and pull the trigger.
Right.
'Cause I was shooting a 1-inch group at 525 yards with that gun. It was a 7 mag. It was a good gun.
Yep.
And finally he's just like, okay. He pulled the trigger, dumped it. He didn't watch it fall. And the whole walk over there, he's like, I didn't hit it. And I'm like, dude, it is laying dead right there. Can you not see it? And he's like, I can't see that far. And I'm like, well, no, you see the white butt and all like the shale rock. And he's like, no. Anyways, we got over there. I beat him to it. And I'm like sitting on the deer, paid my respects. And he like walked over and he started doing circles. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't see the deer. And I'm sitting on the deer.
Yeah.
And what do you do? I'm just like, bro. And like you could just tell he was just like,
right.
And it was like a 25-inch 2x3. It wasn't a whopper deer, but that was his trophy.
Yeah.
And
man, that deer he'll remember forever because of that experience.
He still talks about it, and he still tries to come out to Idaho. They're him and Kevin both are coming out to Idaho this year.
Oh, good.
And I'm going to go back out to the Middle Fork with him.
Cool. It's tough to get tags right now here. For everyone who's thinking about hunting in Idaho, first of all, no guarantee. It's going to suck. And you might not get your tags.
Yeah. And I think they got them in the Selway. I've never been there. I just I like to go, and I've got wolf tags to fill. So anyways, yeah. I want to tell a story about you.
Oh, shit.
Really quick.
Okay.
Since you're the host.
Can you give me a indicator of what it is?
Nope. Tyler asked me, he had a Stanley cow tag, or it was an either sex tag.
Oh, yeah.
Cow or bull.
Yep.
And he's like, hey, Jake, do you want to go with me tomorrow?
I think this story is more embarrassing for you.
No, because of when you'll see.
Okay.
Because you remember what happened afterwards?
No.
When I took you hunting?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah. We lost friendship for a while.
We did.
So anyways, he's like, hey, let's go.
I don't know if I've ever cursed someone out so bad than that day.
We have to cross a small river to get to where we're going.
So this, to clarify, this was my hunting spot that I was taking Jake to.
He wanted help getting an elk out if he killed an elk.
Correct.
But it was a general deer tag, so I brought my gun in case we saw a deer or something. Anyways, we got it. You know, I'm like, well, do I need waders? And he's like, no, it's only like maybe ankle deep. And I was like, okay, perfect, you know. So we got up there, and it's the Salmon River. It's not like, you know, and he told me.
I made it sound like a creek.
Yeah, he made it sound like we could basically jump across it. This particular spot was about 40 to 50 feet wide.
That was a long ways.
And it was waist deep.
Yeah.
And it was fast moving. Yep. Not to mention, it was about negative 10 degrees when we got there.
Waders would have been dangerous, Jake.
Could have drowned, right? So we like get all of our stuff on, and I can like hear the water, and I'm like, okay, like, this doesn't sound like a crick or a creek.
Yeah.
So we get up to it, and he's like, well, this is going to suck. And I'm just like, dude, I'm not.
The river was higher than it was the last time I did that. I'll say that.
Well, and Tyler's 6'3", and I'm 5'8", 5'9", maybe. Right. So, you know, and body mass wise, my temperature is going to drop a lot quicker than yours.
Yeah.
So anyways, he like starts taking his socks and shoes off, and I'm just like, man, he's going to do this. And I'm responsible to go with him.
Right.
Like I can't.
Like, what are you going to do? Sit there all day?
I can't cop out of this. I'm going to be a pussy.
Yeah.
So anyways, I took my shoes off, and you know, he takes like 3 steps in, turns around. He's like, oh, this is going to suck. And I'm just like, oh my Lord. Like,
we didn't even bring shoes to walk across.
No, we went barefoot
across. And what was it? The temperature was like,
it was
-10
degrees. Yeah. -10.
It was bad.
It was cold. It sucked. We had to walk on like a foot of ice to get into the water that froze that night, and it was snowing.
Yep.
It was, anyways. So, you know, he's like taking 2 steps and stopping, and I'm just like, I'm going to have to go. And I got like halfway, sliced my foot open, couldn't feel it.
Yep.
And my core temperature started dropping. So I like got to the other side, and he's like laughing.
Wait, first, before you got to the other side, you were halfway, and you were like, I'm going back. I was like, you're halfway. Like, you might as well keep going. Not realizing the reason you needed to go back was because you had to warm up. Like, you needed to probably get in a vehicle and warm up.
I was 100% when I got halfway. I was hypothermic.
Right.
I was past hypothermic. I couldn't talk. I was getting disoriented.
Yeah.
Anyways, I pushed through, got to the other side.
Because we had to move slow. We couldn't go fast either. That was a big problem because if you moved too fast, you started slipping on the rocks.
Yeah,
and if you were to go in, and you're in big trouble.
Well, we started up here, and we ended about 20 feet down from where we wanted to get out.
Yep.
But anyways, I got to the bank, and I'm like dry heaving. I'm hot and sweaty. Like, I'm going downhill.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking at Tyler, and he's still in the middle laughing at me. Like, dude, that sucked. And I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm dying right now. Like, this is not good.
Yep.
My feet are bleeding. I can't feel them. My legs are numb. And to mind you, like, this water filled my pockets.
Yep.
My cell phone was in my pocket, my wallet, but it was just like waist height. So I rolled up my pants, and it just filled my pockets.
Yep.
And so I'm like, this is not going to be a good day.
Right.
And anyways, it took me probably 20 minutes. I had to drink some water, and
we sat there. Like, we were supposed to be up on the mountain by daylight, and we had to sit there for a long time.
He was giving me a hard time. He's like,
I thought you were being a pussy.
He's like tapping my shoulder, and he's like, we got to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Tyler,
I'm going to die.
I'm purple.
Yeah.
Like, do you see me right now?
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, you're okay. But we really have to go. And I said, then go. Like, I can't move.
Right.
Like, I am, and not realizing it, it took me a couple months to realize, like, I was like really hypothermic.
Right.
But I wasn't worried about it, because I'm just like, stop being a pussy. Like, you got this.
Yeah.
But no, I was like struggling. Anyways, we went up there. We ended up seeing
a lot of deer.
No elk. Though.
No elk.
No, we saw
cow elk.
Yeah, like one for a brief second.
Yeah.
But the hunt sucked.
Yeah.
It was the worst. And we only hiked like maybe 300 yards past the
it
river.
wasn't that bad. Honestly, that's the hardest part, is crossing the river. And then you kind of have the mountain to yourself.
Yeah. But
then you have to cross it back on the way back.
Right. And I'm just like, hey, Tyler, like if we had killed something, how would we have gotten it back? He's like, I don't know. We would have figured it out. I'm just like, okay.
I had an idea of, if that happened, we would make some sort of, and we were young. I was still young. I was like maybe in my 20s, early 20s. But I thought we'll make a raft out of like a plank and we'll somehow like rope it to the other side and just pull it all the way across.
Right. Because my cognitive skills were on point all day.
That's what I was thinking. I took Ben in that same area, and he had a reaction where his hands went completely numb, and then they started slowly coming back with some circulation, and it was so painful. He had to wait for like 30 minutes before blood flow would go back into his hands. And my dad and I could not understand what was happening. Like, we were looking at him like, dude, come on, let's go.
There's something about that spot. I hate that spot.
You've never gone back there with me.
I never will. Ever. You haven't actually invited me back there.
Yeah.
Because I'll say no.
Well, we'd have to go real early if we're going to sit there for a half an hour waiting.
I would rather helicopter in.
Right.
So my point of this, there's 2 points to this.
Yep.
What people will do for an animal, near-death experiences on purpose.
Right.
That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And secondly, it was my turn to take you hunting.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, Tyler, I got this great spot. You want to go hunting?
That was the worst.
He's like, yeah.
Ever.
And so I picked the worst, nastiest, rockiest, thickest spot I could find.
Yeah, I'll paint the picture for people on this one. We hiked for probably 3 hours up the side of this mountain, and we hike up 3 hours, and I look back and I can still see the truck, and I'm fuming because literally the entire time we're walking through brush, we're having to like crawl under logs, like hike up above logs. Like it was horrible, and it was super steep. And we were like half side hilling, half going up. And yeah, I lost it. I was so mad.
For me, it was payback. I'd hunted in there before, but there
was a path. That was the craziest thing. There was a trail. I looked down at the bottom, like there's a trail down at the bottom. We could have been like 3 mountain ranges back.
We could have
by now. And we can still see the truck. Why would we be? I think we were bear hunting. Why would we be able to see a bear?
I think we were bear hunting. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw a bear and a porcupine.
After we went down to the trail.
After we went all the way down to the trail. I took a shot at it.
Oh, that was that one. We saw that we were seeing the porcupine.
Yeah. It was laying on its back. I tell this story all the time because this is why I'm not a bear hunter. It was laying on I have 2 stories about why I'm not a bear hunter. Both of them, I think I was with you. That story, this bear was laying on its back in the sun with a big, huge berry bush in its arms. And you're in my ear going, shoot it, shoot it, shoot it. And I'm like, this is the cutest thing I've ever seen. I can't shoot it.
You got to shoot it before, like if you watch
before
it.
The cuteness hits.
Yeah, so I was like, God.
Yeah.
And you're just like, nope.
Yeah,
nope, I can't.
I couldn't.
And
I did take a shot, but it was just like a run away bear.
After he ran away.
Yeah.
Well, he kind of like looked at us and he's like, oh, somebody's watching.
Yeah.
Me.
Yeah.
And he like got up. And then you're like, okay.
Yeah.
And
now that he's not looking as cute.
Yeah. I don't even know where you hit, but you hit way high.
Way high.
It was
I didn't even try.
100 yards maybe.
Yeah.
Easy shot. But you were just like, no.
Yeah, I did not want to shoot it. And the second time was like, I think that same year, but it was before that bear. We saw one across the canyon, and it was a long shot. But it was rolling rocks down the mountain and logs down the mountain. And then it was like pouncing up and down, watching it roll down the mountain. And
excited
I was like,
from
that is
victory.
The cutest thing ever. I'm not shooting that bear.
Yep.
And that's why we have a bear problem in Idaho.
There was one in that same spot that he was crossing a log, like doing the wide steps, like
Yeah, totally.
And he slipped and fell and racked himself. And I was only like 200 yards and I could hear him. And I was like, oh my God, that bear just racked himself.
Yeah.
Like,
too human-like.
can't kill that one.
No.
And it was a good bear, but I was just like, nope.
Bear too cute for me.
But anyways, to finish that story.
Yeah, sorry.
Tyler lost it on me.
I did.
And I'm just smiling. So I'm like, dude, I crossed the Salmon River in the middle of
it was
the worst temperatures ever.
It was so horrible that as we were walking down, I wanted you to feel how bad I felt. And so I was just saying the meanest things I could think of as we were walking down.
If we wouldn't have been walking, if we had been talking to each other, we probably would have gotten in a fist fight.
Oh yeah, totally. I was behind you kind of yelling like anything I could think of.
I was so mad.
And I was right out of Bible school at that time too. So the things I was saying was probably like pent up things I've wanted to say to people, but haven't been. I wasn't cursing at the time. And I just like let it unleash in that moment. It was the most frustrating hike ever. And I didn't realize you were just trying to pay me back for what I did. And I think you even said like, that's what you get for making me cross the Salmon River.
How's that creek look down there, Tyler? Let's go cross it. Yeah. And like, we didn't really talk that much for like 3 years.
Oh yeah.
It lasted a while.
Yeah.
And
I said mean things, really mean things.
And I didn't care. I was just like, here it is again. Yeah. I won.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel like I won.
Right.
Because that Salmon River experience was the worst. I mean,
you were trying to pay me back for you feeling like you were inadequate.
I feel like I got taken advantage of.
Yeah.
Like I felt weak.
Right. Yes. So you're like, I'm going to make him feel weak.
It's like, what would Tyler hate the most? Probably what I would hate the most. But I'm going to do it, and I'm going to put myself through it.
And I'm going to pretend like it's no big deal.
Yep. And I did. I was like, come on, let's just go a little further.
Yeah.
Let's just go a little further.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm small, you're large.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these places I was like sneaking through.
Yeah.
He was just like, Jake, you're dumb. We're not doing that. I'm like, well, find your own way. And that was the only way.
Yeah. No, it was horrible.
And I do feel bad now, but it was like,
thanks.
Once I think about the Salmon River, it's like, nah, we got even.
Yeah.
Like, that's past.
All right. I see.
What was your question a while ago?
Yeah. So tell me about, and we can start to wrap it up with this, but tell me about the shooting that you're doing, training people, why you're passionate about that. And we've definitely touched on that a little bit. And talk about like the future, what the future brings for you.
I would love to answer that honestly, but I don't know. I just kind of take the path and go. But basically, I'm a firearms instructor.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I love to teach the most, my background comes from, I worked for a gentleman that we did a lot of long range shooting and training with some high end entities. And I basically learned like that's where my life changed is because it was like I found my niche. I'm not the best. I'm decent. I can hold my own. But I teach people how to do ethical shots out in the woods. And my ethical is going to be different than your ethical. Like
we talk about that all the time.
What I'm comfortable with and what you're comfortable with.
Right.
I took your basic generic 270 and hit the 1,000-yard target with it.
Right.
With 2 shots. I think you bet me $100.
Yeah. Probably still owe you $100.
That was a while ago, but you know, it's everybody's comfort zone is different.
Sure.
And I help people find that comfort zone, make them confident. You know, everybody says, oh man, I've got a 3-inch group at 1,000 yards. Show me a 5-inch group at 500 yards and I'll believe you.
Yeah.
And most people can't.
Right.
I shoot a lot. I shoot the regional PRS series and I'm traveling all over the place, shooting these matches all over the Northwest. And I don't think I could have a 3-inch group at 500 yards.
Right.
I can hit a 3-inch plate 4 out of 5 shots, but that one shot ruins your whole group.
Right.
You know? So, I just help people. I want people to be ethical. I don't want to see an animal suffer.
Right.
And so I take people out and I'm like, okay, you know, what are you comfortable shooting? Well, I'm comfortable at 100 yards. Like, okay, well, let's be practical. how many shots are you going to get at 100 yards in Idaho?
Right.
Like you're shooting, you hike up one mountain, you find the deer on the next. You can a lot of times close that distance, not to 100 yards though. They're too smart for that. Yeah. They've been shot at before. So most people's comfort zone is that 400 to 500 yard range. Yeah. And with these guns and technology that we have now, that is an ethical shot.
Right.
Most people can shoot first shot impact at 500 yards, and that's the heart size. That's not lungs. That's, you know, on a deer, you have an 18-inch kill radius.
Right.
On an elk, you've got 24. That's huge.
Right.
You know, if you can shoot, you know, a 3-inch plate, you're in the kill zone.
Right.
So I help people with that. I do a lot of like intro to handguns, handgun safety, manipulating the weapon, take it apart, clean it, how to use it, how to store it. So I teach shotguns, handguns, and rifles.
Gotcha.
I compete in handguns. I compete in 3-gun. I compete in long range.
What is, for the person who's just wanting to get into some long range, but they're also wanting to use that rifle for hunting, what is your go-to rifle?
Well, it depends. There's a lot of people that hunt different species, and one gun that does it all exists, but it really just depends on the person. You know, you got to build.
Average person, average like income, willing to spend, let's say $1,000 on, let's say $1,500 on rifle and scope. What would you recommend to that person for the area that we're in?
Caliber wise or rifle wise?
Kind of everything. This is your chance to get some sponsors here, Jake.
Yeah, well, the rifle I'm going to recommend, I don't want to be sponsored by. Honestly,
well, you're about to lose a potential sponsor right here.
There's a couple of really good, just a Remington 700.
Yep.
Buy that gun, and that's the most versatile gun on the market. There's parts everywhere. There's stocks everywhere. Basically, you buy the gun for $600-700, and then you build it over the next couple of years. You change little things, build it how you want. What I will suggest to everybody is a muzzle brake, because those guns, you know, 300 Win Mag, that kicks the snot out of your shoulder.
Right.
Then you start developing a flinch.
Yep.
And you miss before you even pull the trigger. That's what happens with 90% of people. Is
do you find that's the most common thing? When
it's one of the most common things.
Because I went from shooting a rifle that I've literally shot since I was 12 years old, first doe, all the way up until I think 3 or 4 years ago, until I finally was like, okay, I'm going to upgrade. I'm still going to use a 270, but I'm going to upgrade to an American standard rifle. And I kept telling you over and over, the gun is off. And actually, the first time it was, the scope was like moving just a tiny bit. Something wasn't tight. But even after we got it really settled and I was shooting, I was like, the gun is off. I don't care what you say. The gun is off. And I found very quickly that it was definitely me flinching and me being super used to my other rifle that I was confident in. I could pull the trigger and watch the deer fall in my scope. Yeah. Like I knew I could shoot that thing without it even moving. And having this new gun that definitely has more of a kick, and this is before I had the muzzle brake, had more of a kick, I'd shoot and then I'd be totally blind as to what's happening. And I was developing a flinch because I wanted to see. I wanted to see what was going on.
And you actually push the gun because you're anticipating the recoil and you're pushing into it so that you can see.
Right.
And what that muzzle brake does is a lot of people hunt solo. They don't have 3 guys behind them glassing like, oh, you were high left.
Right.
It's like if you can't see your impact where your bullet hits, you can't make a correction. You're no longer ethical to shoot that deer. So you have to be able to see your impact to make a correction if you miss. But you want to know, like, I want to know where I hit it. You know, I want to know everything. And because I do hunt solo, I shoot suppressed as well. But I've bought 3 suppressors to get the right one that works for me, because I shoot a pretty big caliber. But honestly, Remington 700, super basic, not expensive, but they shoot well, and you can change them to anything you want.
You can kit them out.
Basically, yeah, for an affordable rate.
Right.
It's not super expensive. Copper Basin Rifles, Chris Palmer, he does all my stuff. He's at Idaho Falls. He comes up here a couple times a week, and he builds incredible guns.
Yeah.
Caliber-wise, anything, I would not suggest a 308 to anybody.
That's surprising because I think I was thinking I was going to get a 308 at some point.
They're okay, but your max kill distance, you got to have enough foot-pounds of energy to do an ethical kill shot.
Right.
And there's a rule of thumb. I can't remember exactly what it is, but you want to be over 1,000 to ethically kill an animal. A 45 ACP is like 1,200 foot-pounds of energy at 15 yards.
Yep.
That's a big bullet. And it slaps that target hard. So just put it in perspective.
Yep.
So you want to have that. If you're shooting at 500 yards, you make yourself a chart, and that's what I help people do. It's like, okay, you want this caliber? Well, here's what you can do with this caliber. And a lot of people shy away from a lot of calibers. 7 mag is a really good deer gun, elk gun. You can kill everything with it ethically.
Right.
But ammo, now that we're in an ammo shortage, we can't get ammo for 300 Win mag, 7 mag. We've got ammo for weird stuff.
I was on pre-order until you helped me. I was on pre-order for 270. What is it? Hornady ELDX. I was on pre-order for 2 years.
Yep.
So yeah,
and
ammo crisis right now.
We paid a little bit for it, but you got 5 boxes.
Yeah. I'm gonna do what I can to hoard those boxes.
And now I can't find any.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the thing. And basically there's so many guns out there. There's so many calibers. I would not hunt with a 6.5 Creedmoor.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion. I've seen a lot of people wound animals with them. They just don't have quite enough horsepower. They were designed for a target gun.
Yep.
The 6.5 PRC is good. It is same caliber, just a lot more horsepower behind it.
Yep.
But anything bigger, than the 6.5 Creedmoor, you don't need to go out there and buy a 338 Lapua or Win Mag.
Yep.
You don't need that. 300 Win Mag, stick with those calibers that have been around forever. Because you'll find ammo when we're not in a shortage.
Right.
And they're easy to find information on.
Gotcha.
Tikas are really good. They're a little bit more pricey.
Yep.
But they're really lightweight.
I love my Tika 223 for a coyote gun. Like that gun, literally, out of the box, I felt like it shot perfect every single time.
And they do. Tikas are really nice. They're just without a muzzle brake on them, there's too much recoil. They're a lightweight gun, which is great for women. But you don't want to get it in a big caliber because it'll thump you.
Gotcha.
Savage came out with a new gun a year or 2 ago. It's got a carbon fiber barrel.
Yep.
They shoot really good. And they're lightweight. Great for smaller frame people. You can pack them on your pack.
Yep.
I've shot so many different guns. It's hard to name one, but I would definitely invest a little bit of money. It's like the saying, buy nice or buy twice.
Right.
I bought and sold a lot of guns until I finally figured out this is what I use.
Well, can people hire you to talk about their setup, figure out their gun situation? You can take them to the range, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. My company is called Skyline Defense. It's on Instagram. I think it's just on Instagram. I have a website.
What's your website?
SkylineDefense.com.
To kind of end all this, to kind of wrap it up, because we talked about long range shooting, and you and I have very different opinions on the ethics for long range. And that's probably mostly because my experience is I can shoot a steel plate at 1,200 yards. But I would never hunt for something at 1,200 yards. If someone gets really comfortable at a certain distance, what do you recommend when they're actually in the field as far as hunting?
There's so many variations in the field. Things can change, especially in Idaho. You can see all 4 seasons in one day. That's going to change your bullet trajectory. Unless you've had extensive training and gone through classes, and you have a Kestrel with a weather app on it that's calibrating everything for you, you don't shoot. Everything has to be perfect. And like what I do, I shoot year round, and I shoot a lot. I don't shoot my hunting rifle as much because it's really expensive. It's a 28. It's a 28 Nosler. It's all custom loads. And that's so that I can be accurate. Everything's weighed and measured perfectly. And what I do shoot about 100 rounds before hunting season, all different distances. And whatever I can consistently shoot cold bore and hit my first shot exactly where I want, which is within a 3-inch circle, that's my max distance. But it has to be cold bore. So it takes about 2 days to figure out what distance that is. Sometimes, it's 1,040. Do I want to shoot a deer at 1,040? No way.
Right.
There's a lot of things that can happen in 1,000 yards with a wild animal.
Right. Well, and even factoring in, especially for new hunters, you may get really good at shooting at 1,000 yards. But then all of a sudden, a deer walks out at 1,000 yards, and there's a whole different realm at play, and that's what's happening internally.
Yeah, and those deer are moving.
Yeah.
You take a shot, it's going to take your bullet more than a second to get there.
Right.
That deer could take a step, and that's the difference of hitting vitals versus
gut shot
right in the ass.
Yeah.
Which is the worst. You don't want to shoot them in the guts or the butt. That's the worst. And I've shot one deer at 1,056, and I've been chasing this deer a long time.
Right. So you'd recommend that people establish that max distance, and only if they're comfortable, like they're comfortable hunting and they've hunted enough, they know when they're having buck fever, they know when their heart rate's racing. They should consider that into play as well.
You're not going to go out in one day and figure out what your comfort zone is.
Right.
At all. And I would not suggest that to anybody.
Well, and there's a big difference between finding your comfort zone at the range and finding it when you're shooting it.
And like, that's what I do for people is I'll take them out and I'll put them in the most uncomfortable situation. I'll say, okay, here's your target. It's 500 yards. Can you hit it?
Right.
And, ballistics, weather, wind, all that counts at 500 yards. It doesn't matter how fast your bullet is. You have to take that into consideration. Not on a steel target, but on an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And, that shot that I took, it took me, because he was moving. I couldn't make an ethical shot. He was walking. He was chasing does. And I had to wait until I knew he was not going to move. And same thing. He dropped his back in because he was going to take a poop. I said, I know I got about 7 seconds to make this shot count.
Right.
And I did. And I still can't believe it. Would I suggest somebody shooting that far? No way.
Right.
Will I do it again? No way. But I was confident. The weather was
all
perfect.
the stars aligned to make a shot like that.
Yeah, the wind was consistent. I was able to get a calculation on the wind, and I was able to make that shot.
Right.
Because you could have missed just as easily, or it could have hit him bad. But the way he dropped, he was kind of vertical. Like his butt was pretty low.
Yeah.
Like it would be like a doe peeing. He got low.
Yeah.
And the way the angle was, if I would have missed left or right, like it was kill zone or nothing else.
Right.
Vertical wise, I was pretty solid on my elevation because like I said, I shoot a lot. The only thing I wasn't 100% certain on was the wind. And I have a little computer, a Kestrel, that I can hold it up and calculate the wind, and it tells me exactly what to do.
Yeah.
So that's why I took the shot.
Right.
But new shooters, man, it takes about 200 rounds, honestly, 200 rounds of shooting to be like, okay, here's, if people want to be comfortable at 500 yards, we're going to shoot 200 rounds at 1,000 yards before we go to 500. 500 is going to feel like you're shooting a tick off of his nose.
Yeah.
And that's what I do for people is just get them comfortable. I want to shoot a deer. I don't want to shoot anything past 300. All right, let's go to 600. Let's get you comfortable at 6. 3 will be a breeze.
Right.
You'll know exactly what's going on. You'll be like, oh, this is actually really easy.
Right. I like that. That's good.
It's helpful. I do it with myself every year. I'm like, okay, let's go out to 3,000 yards, and let's make this really challenging so that everything, 500 yards, I really don't have to think about that anymore.
Yeah.
When I'm hunting, I do. Like
Right.
shooting that deer at 1,056 took me about 30 minutes.
Right.
Because I had to make sure everything was perfect.
Right.
And it was getting dark. And then I started rushing it. And I'm like, it's taken me 20 something days just to find him. I knew he was there. I saw him and I couldn't find him. And finally he stepped out. And I'm like, there's a perfect little flat spot on a rock cliff. That's where I'm shooting from.
Right.
I couldn't get any closer. And I've been chasing him for 4 years.
Right.
And same thing. People didn't believe me. Like, this buck's huge.
Right.
And he's 190 plus.
Yep.
9.5 years old.
That's awesome.
So
did you get your story out? Did you get any stories out about Josh? Did you need any stories out about Josh?
Just how many times he shot a gun inside of a house.
Oh, yeah. So to get back at Josh for telling that butthole story.
So my brother is he's a Nazi for gun safety. I mean, everybody should be. He's legally an RSO, which is a range safety officer. He has that certification.
Yep. He might not after the story, but
he still does, unfortunately. So one thing about him is he has discharged a firearm inside of a house 4 times. And
I think we told one. I think he got the most mellow one out on the
my
podcast.
Parents' window.
Yes.
When he was aiming at the back. Anyways, there's more to that story that I probably shouldn't talk about.
Right.
But yeah, he tried to tell my parents that a Mexican threw a rock through the window. Like, my dad's like, dude, there's powder burns through a bullet hole. Like,
that's like the most racist
what
thing
are you
could
talking
ever say.
about? He like opened the blinds and it was black.
Yeah.
And my dad's just like, okay. So there's that one. There was the pool table incident. We had a big slate table in our house, pool table. And he got this new gun. He's all excited. There's like 5 or 6 of us there.
Yeah.
Why he had a magazine in the gun, I don't know.
With bullets in it.
But he blamed it on somebody else. Anyways, he's like dry firing it with the magazine in it, fully loaded. He blamed it on somebody else, but somebody racked it. I don't know if it was him or Garrett.
Yeah.
Somebody. Anyways, flipped it off of safety. Boom. And because of that slate table and being a 223, that bullet came apart. And it like potentially went in between 3 different people because the bullet shrouded out.
Yeah.
And his wife now was sitting on the couch and there was like 3 bullet holes right underneath her. And yeah, it was just like, I got so mad. Like, I pushed him, ripped the gun out of his hands.
Yeah.
Like, I just like, dude, what are you doing?
Right.
There's a house full of people. You shouldn't even have this out. It's
you shouldn't be
safe.
pulling the trigger.
No, with a magazine in it.
Right.
So that was another one. Another one, he was taking a pee in his house.
Yep.
And he had a 357 revolver. Those are pretty simple to tell if they're loaded or not.
Yeah.
And he was dry firing it while he was peeing. Anyways, the gun goes off. Goes through that wall, through the hallway, through 3 more walls, into his closet, and stopped somewhere in his wife's clothes.
I didn't even hear this one.
Yeah. And I was at his house one time and, I dribbled or something. So I like wiped the toilet seat and I looked down and I'm like, that's a bullet hole. Perfectly round. He tried to cover it.
Right.
And I like went out there and I'm like, hey, Josh, what's that? And he's just like, and eventually he's just like, yeah, man, I was like taking a pee, looking at my gun and it went off.
Yeah.
Like, well, they don't just go off.
Right.
Like, did you check if it was empty? Yeah. Obviously you didn't.
Right.
Why would you be pulling the trigger? Like,
does Hannah know? Hannah's his wife.
I think she does now.
Okay. Well, she for sure will now.
Because I knew. And I was just like, hey, you know about this one?
Yeah.
And she was just like, I'm not even surprised. And that's when it's like bad enough that she's not like that disappointed. You know what I mean?
Right. Like if I had a gun go off in the house, Amory would be like, okay, time to move everything to the garage, out of reach.
You're fired.
Never happen again. Yeah. You're going to get everything out.
Most people they have like one incident and like they blow a foot off, blow an arm off. Like
he's gotten lucky.
He's had 4.
Yeah.
And the 4th one, I don't even remember what the 4th one was. He's told me, but my point is there's been 4.
Yeah.
And he only tells people about 1.
Right.
One of my police officer friends came over and he like walked in. Josh was feeling pretty lambish, you know?
Right.
And he like walked in. Josh was like, look what I can do. And he takes like 4 shots. And I'm just like, man, what is going on?
Yeah.
He was like the wild child of the family.
Right.
Well, we were both kind of wild. And I watched how he got caught and I was able to get away with more.
Right.
But that same night, man, he just like randomly got up. There was like 15 people at the house watching a movie. He just like got up and started peeing all over his TV. PlayStation or Xbox at the time.
I remember that. He was sleepwalking.
Dude, and like that whole day was just like, you know, and
he was a mess.
I like got up and I like grabbed him by the shirt. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's just like, I'm peeing. I know. Do you know where you're peeing? And he's like, in the toilet. And I just like turned him back around and let him finish. Yep. It went like down the air duct vent. And I mean, that was
your poor homeowner.
Oh yeah. My dad doesn't know some of this because he'd be embarrassed. Between the stuff, you know, and these brands that we branded each other.
Yeah.
What kind of?
Well, you branded yourselves.
I didn't brand myself.
Really?
I branded him and he branded me.
Oh.
But because we're brothers, I was like, I'll go first.
Yeah. Right.
Stupidest thing ever. Look at this big old scar.
I know.
Like,
that's pretty dumb.
Yeah. My parents were just like, you guys are a lost cause. And they only know half of it, you know?
Yeah.
So,
true.
Yeah, there you go, Josh.
Yeah. That's good payback.
I'm sure there's more.
Oh, yeah. Good pay. Well, I'm sure he'll be back on. He'll tell a few more stories, and this will just keep going back and forth.
Man. So I should save some.
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
So people can find you at skyline-defense.com, and you can walk them through gun safety. You can walk them through pistol training, rifle training, and then you and Benji do some outdoor expedition type stuff.
Benji does most of that. I just help with the firearm side of things. Perfect. So we do kids classes, you know, anywhere from 8 years old all the way up to, you know, teenagers, adults, anywhere from never even seen a firearm all the way up to competition level.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, I hope people reach out. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Okay, sweet.
Dude, it was
the room and the tension in the room was really palpable. Palpable. The room.
Edit.
The room in the wait, hang on. The tension in the room was. Do I need to be at a different angle? Okay. The tension in the room was palpable. There was a lot of tension in the room. Okay, let me start that over. The tension in the room was palpable.
You have to say this.
Why can't I say that word? Palpable. That can't be the right word. Palpable. Palpable?
You might just want to say.
I'm just going to say it was really tense. Really tense.
Shit got weird.
Yeah.